Hey, my favorite Ruby girls. How y'all doing this evening? This is your favorite Ruby girl, Dr. K, also known as Coach K, but it's always, like I just said, your very favorite Ruby girl. So I'm excited this evening. You know what? I'm going to get on here one Tuesday and I'm not going to be excited. I wonder what Tuesday that's going to be. Well, you got to tune in to see. But tonight, I'm excited. And I'm excited because I get to talk to the most amazing people every week. And I meet people in maybe on Facebook, different settings. But tonight's guest, I met her at a conference and she spoke with so much power and clarity about what she does for a living and how she's just adamant about us at building wealth building when it comes to real estate, that it just really had my mind thinking about some opportunities I let go in real estate. So I don't want y'all to make the same mistakes I made, probably you have made, or people that we know around us that has made. And the thing about it was you could tell she was anointed for what she does. Now, don't get me wrong, it's some people that's good at real estate, good at maybe good at something else or something, but there's a difference when you deal with somebody that's anointed, that you know that God has ordained them for this. It is like not a, it's like a ministry almost, because it's a call that you can feel that's inside of them. The information she shared, the passion and how she shared it. And even some of the ladies even commented and said, you know, you anointed for real estate. So now that I gave her that great and beautiful introduction, what I'm gonna do for Miss Beverly tonight, and I was telling her I charge $1 million for this, but she said she used to write bigger checks than that. So I can't argue with that. So I'm going to share this video to her page. We're going to take a, well, let's see how fast I can do this. A 1 second. I think I'm pretty fast with this. All right. All right. Now I'm sharing it. Okay. See, only 1 second. So I'm going to give my commercial and then I'm going to let her introduce herself. So I am once again your favorite Ruby Girl, Dr. K. And so Ruby Girl comes from Proverbs 31:10. If you're new to my page, who can find a virtuous woman for her price is far above the price of a ruby. So this special is for my beautiful Ruby girls only. It makes you rare, virtuous, and valuable. And so Ruby Girl is a platform where we are restoring the worth of the woman. We see so many negative images in society, on social media, about women and what women are doing out there. So we want to restore those images to where when women were respected, when men would, if they said a bad word, remember this, Miss Beverly? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to say that, or please excuse me. I don't mean to
Right,
disrespect you.
right.
So men were very conscious of being respectful towards women. And so now that we see that the level of respect has dropped as far as men, we see a lot of murder suicide. We see a lot of negative things happening. But the Ruby Girl platform is giving women a voice to talk about their business, to talk about what they've been through, so they can empower other women. We just don't go through stuff just to go through stuff. God redeems our pain and turns it
Yeah.
into our purpose. And so tonight we got Miss Beverly Jordan. So, Miss Beverly, if you could just give us a 30-second introduction, we would be so happy to know who you are, what you do, and whatever else you got to share tonight.
Absolutely. Again, my name is Beverly Jordan. I am a realtor and professional real estate broker, owner, and manager of Global Scope Real Estate Solutions, where my tagline is selling dreams called real estate. And I sell dreams in the form of residential property. That means it's a home for you and your family. Commercial property. That means it's a home for your church family or your business, and certainly vacant land. And so we are open to making certain that our clients are satisfied. We tailor each transaction to fit the client's needs, and not only in the state of Michigan, but we also offer referral services outside of the state of Michigan as well.
Wow. And I notice this is global. And
Yes,
global is not
ma'am.
global Michigan. Global means all over the world.
All
I
over the world. And I am a certified international property specialist. That doesn't mean that I'm licensed all over the world, but that does mean that I belong to a conglomerate that they are licensed in various countries and states. And so I can reach out to them in collaboration to get the deal done.
You know what it reminded me of? Like of the floral shops. How like I can order something from Michigan and they send the order to the state that I want the flowers delivered in. And I never thought about that, that real estate agents kind of have that network kind of set up also. You know, I just thought you was just limited to where you was licensed at. But I like that because you think out the box. And see
Well,
when go ahead.
sorry, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, not all realtors do that. Some realtors, they like a farm area. So like if you're in Detroit, they like a certain zip code, and that's all they work. So it really depends on the actual realtor. And that's why I wanted the name of my brokerage to reflect that I did not want to be boxed in. I don't want to be limited uh, in the scope of service and where I service. So.
And see, that's what I like about you. You have a big vision. You don't put limits on God and you don't put limits on yourself. You think forward and you think big. A lot of us just thinking, okay, I'm just gonna think I'm gonna grow in Michigan everywhere. But you understand that God's vision is wide, is bigger than what we can just achieve by ourselves. And I was just thinking today, I was thinking about when I was looking at your business, I was like, how many women do I know that own a real estate agency? And I was like, I can't really think of any. And I was like, and so in a few minutes, I'm gonna ask you to tell us how you became your story of becoming a real estate agent. But I definitely gotta ask you this. What made you start your own agency? You could have just been like every other real estate agent, work for somebody, but what made you step out the boat?
Mhm. Well, several things. One is to be honest, and I don't say this from a high place, but the Lord endowed me with leadership. I mean, from as long as I can remember, I have been a leader, and to be honest, for years I didn't even recognize it. Although I was always in leadership roles, it took my husband one day, and this has been over 25 years ago. He said to me, I notice everywhere you go, you end up being a leader. And I thought, And as I reflected back on it, it's true. And so when in leadership, you take on responsibility. You're not necessarily always dependent upon everyone else to handle or provide the solution or the research, or you expect them to be the responsible party. And so what I found myself doing in real estate, and I was with two boutique services and two what they call big box agencies. Boutique meaning small, privately owned, female owned, like myself. That means when we say boutique real estate agencies. And then big box, well, big box would be like a real estate one, or what is the EXP or something. We refer to them as big box. So I was with two smaller ones and two larger ones, boutique and big box. So my broad experience was accumulation of all of those brokerages, the stops, and getting knowledge and understanding from not only from the standpoint of contractual agreement, but also foundational operations. And with that, during COVID, well, actually, it was 2019 because COVID, the quarantine happened in 2020. But in 2019, the Lord spoke to me at the end of the year and said, all things real estate. And he began to talk to me about getting my own brokerage, establishing my own brokerage. And this wasn't the first time we'd had this conversation. It happened years ago prior to that, but I was intimidated and I didn't follow through. You know how sometimes you can just be. And so, but when he spoke at that time, I knew that it was time for me to come from under the other brokerages. And I knew that it was time for me to launch out into the deep. And so I'd already had the name. The Lord had given me the name. I'd already filed it. And earlier, even like almost a year before actually becoming a licensed broker, I filed the name with the state of Michigan. In fact, May 2019. And I didn't become the actual quote unquote licensed broker until August 2020. So, but I was pre planning, putting the legwork And so I wasn't one that asked the brokers for a lot of direction. And because I didn't go to my brokers or leaders at that time, principal broker, for a lot of direction, I really was self-contained. So what sense did it make to be under someone else's brokerage, and you're really not learning, not gleaming, not asking, anything of them? And so it was really time to shift gears and move on. And each stop was very beneficial. The Lord blessed in each stop. So I do want to say that.
I like that, which how your husband pointed out your leadership skills because we have blind spots. And
Yeah.
even some things like just say for instance, like, oh, I can every time I come, I have to take over, I have to direct somebody or something, no matter where I go. And sometimes for some people it might be irritating, not understanding it's a leadership seed that's in them that no matter where they go, like you be like, I'm just gonna go in the room and I'm just gonna sit here. The next thing you know, you're doing something, you're directing something. So for your husband to see that leadership skill in you, it's almost like it woke up something in you that maybe open your eyes a little bit to start seeing different things that have happened to you in your life. But I like the fact that you said you had to, launch out into the deep. Anytime you become your CEO, when you become a CEO and you're the sole, you start off as a sole employee, it's a it's a transition because it could be a lot of fear, uncertainty, coming out your comfort zone. Really, it's big on trusting God because this is when you start your faith walk. Being an employee is not so much of a faith walk because the only thing you believe in for is a raise and that they don't lay you off and fire you. But when you are a boss, it's so many things because you don't know day to day if you're gonna have a sale, day to day this, day to day that, how we gonna make it, and all that. And I do remember, when I was part owner of a car dealership, I didn't even know I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything about entrepreneur. I just know I was able to say, "Oh yeah, I'm part owner of a car dealership." I was in my 20s, and I used to see
Wow.
miracles. Miss Beverly, I remember we would be like $40,000 short in our bank account. So my boss was a charmer, right? But my partner. So he had charmed this lady at the bank into paying our overdraft. So we were up like about maybe $30,000 short in our bank account.
Wow.
I guarantee you, every time we got short, God would send a check for a car we've been waiting on. I
Wow.
had a guy that just got out of prison show up with a $10,000 check one day. We were short like maybe 10 or 11. He had just got out of prison, showed up with the check and said, I want to buy a car from y'all. So when I tell you God was just doing miracles, and this man was not quote unquote say a believer, and this is after I got saved, but I saw God do so many miracles for him
Yeah.
just because he stepped out on faith and he believed in what he was anointed for what he was doing. He could look at a car, Miss Beverly, and tell you exactly how much the blue book value was, the price he can get.
What?
And probably even you probably so good at real estate. I just believe that you probably can drive down the street and kind of look at a house and be like, you know what, that house will probably sell for like maybe 80,000. You'll be real close. So it's
Usually, yeah.
amazing. See, I know.
Yeah, because when you
Yeah,
don't work in just one area and you've
yeah.
sold homes in that particular area, or you've done the research or comparative market analysis because might have had a client that was interested in a particular area, you typically know the sales, the price points of the particular homes, particularly when you look at even the external, the areas themselves might be nice, but the home itself has a greater curb appeal, so what the interior potentially could look like. So yeah, most versed agents have that skill to do that, I would say.
Okay. So now
Mhm.
tell us, what made you decide to become a real estate agent? And the name of her company, as you can see, is Global Scope Real Estate Solutions. That's the name of her agency. But what started you on this journey? Let's back up a little bit.
So I was out in Beverly Hills, Michigan, at a moving sale. I saw a moving sale. I love estate sales and moving sales. Okay. So I saw the big signs at moving sales. So I was coming down Lasser and I stopped and at the moving sale met this lady. Her name is Etna Berry, and she is at the time she was owner of Gold Key Realty, Gold Key Realty, right there in Lathrop Village off of Southfield Road. And so she asked me, she said, have you ever considered, now this is in 2006, she said, have you ever considered selling real estate? And I said, no, not from the standpoint of being licensed. I thought about it from a standpoint of being an investor. And so she said, well, you should think about it. And I said, okay, as I'm looking for articles to purchase, I'm listening to her, but not really. So I thought. And but there was a particular item we couldn't find the top two. And she said, oh, give me your number. And when I find it, I'll call you. Well, a couple of weeks later, she finds it and she calls me. She says, have you thought any more about selling real estate? And I said, well, yeah, I have, come to think of it. In fact, it's been on my mind pretty heavily. And so, as the saying goes, the rest is history. I took the exam. Now, just so you know, a lot of people said to me, oh, you're taking the real estate exam? Oh, it's a hard exam. And I had to take it 4 or 5 times and on and on and on. So, of course, I don't know. If that's so or not. So I go back and tell Miss Berry. I said, well, they said it was really hard. Now, mind you, I'm in my 40s. Okay, it's not like I'm 19. Okay, so I said, well, they said it was hard. It was a difficult test. She says, no, Beverly. She says, I tell you what you do. Once you finish the course, you take about 2 weeks to study the material. Then you go take the exam. So that's what I did. Just what she said, and of course I passed it, flying colors, right? Um, now, to my surprise, when I stepped into the real estate course to that class, I was surprised to see all these 18 and 19 and 20-year olds. I don't know why I thought they were all going to be my age or older, but they were all babies. Like they could have been my children or grandchildren. So anyway, that was my experience, and so that's how I became um, a licensed realtor. And so I actually, let's see, how long was I a realtor before I actually got my so what, 12 years? No, oh, maybe 14. Let's see, 2006 to 2020. Yeah, 14 years. Uh, I was a real estate agent under other brokerages before I became a principal broker, an owner of an agency.
Oh wow. Isn't that's amazing, that connection. People usually will speak what you are. But sometimes we can be stubborn or we just don't, it just don't fall into our ears and our heart at the right time. And so for you to randomly meet this lady and for her to just basically put you on the path that you are now, that's just amazing. So I want to say this to other entrepreneurs and business owners that's out there listening, and you're wondering, is it time for you to pivot in your business? I want you to think about what people tell you about yourself, or even somebody might have gave you an idea like, why don't you do this or why don't you do it? And sometimes people are like, oh, that's too hard because I have a business group and they suggest certain things to me. And I'll be like, no, that's too time consuming, but I might need to revisit some of that stuff that they told me because they could literally be connecting me to my next or to the path that I need to be on. But I love that. I love stories like that of how people connect with other people and then you find, I would say, your true calling, because real estate is like a calling to you. And
It
so
is.
how has the industry changed in the years you have been an agent? What have you seen more prevalent? Because remember we were talking about how people think it's easy, and you're
Yes,
seeing yeah.
yes. Well, one of the things about real estate is that most people don't know. So, yeah, those are on the outside looking in think, oh, it's so easy. You just run show a house and then you get this big fat check, and they don't really have a clue. There is so much work that goes into being a realtor. And that's why 87% of realtors leave the industry within 5 years of coming aboard. 87%. Why? Because it is a challenging job, because it is entrepreneurship. So if you don't sell, you don't, you don't get a check. But whether you get that check or not, guess what continues to occur? You continue to have your monthly expenses, your quarterly expenses, your annual expenses. So whether you earn any money or not, those expenses for being a realtor, being a broker, all of those expenses still remain in place. Not to mention that depending on the brokerage that you're with, if you're on a 37% split or 50% split or 60% split, so that means that if you didn't get a check for a long time and you finally get a check and you've had to pay your expenses, but now you have to split 37% depending on the brokerage, 50%, 60% of your check, and they get the larger part. so, or, you know, it just really depends on the brokerage that you're with as to what that split is. So once people really have a revelation that, oh, this is not that glamorous, not to mention, when you're working with clients, there sometimes can be apprehension and fear, because it's the biggest decision. It's a huge financial decision. And sometimes you have one client that maybe a married couple, one likes the house, one doesn't like the house, and you've been working with them for months. And so sometimes if you're not a patient person, being a realtor, you might get frustrated and leave the industry because the deals fall apart, or seem like the people, the buyers or sellers are indecisive, or the expenses are just too enormous based on your sales. The sales are not there, and they're too far and few in between, and so forth. So there's a lot. There's too much administrative work. You didn't know that you had to follow up. You didn't know you had to be, uh, you know, there for the inspection. You didn't know you had to follow for the inspection. You didn't know you had to write an addendum. You didn't know you had to renegotiate. You didn't know you had to,
Ooh,
renegotiate even on the repairs. You didn't understand that, you had to renegotiate on the appraisal. You didn't know that now you have to work through some credit blemishes that they came up with at the last minute. And so now you've got to rework, and maybe the buyer has to go to another lender. So there are a lot of different changes that can happen and do happen in the midst of transactions, because again, it is a major decision, major purchase, major transaction. And oftentimes, either people will think of it as so overwhelming, overbearing that they do nothing, or they just think of it so cavalier that they don't do enough.
that was a lot. I was one of them people who thought you just walk in, look pretty, show the house, and that's all you had to do. Do a little paperwork, show up, get your check. I never knew that some brokers take like 50%, or I forgot that even through.
Today, still do today. I was talking with a young lady last, maybe I met with her maybe a month ago, because we were, she was talking about maybe joining my brokerage. And and she was saying that her split is 50%. And she is not a newbie. It's not like she's a beginner. She's been in the industry for years. And so for her to be at a place where they're taking 50%, hey, whatever works for you. But
Woo,
the brokerages, they get the money.
we thought Uncle Sam was demanding. Wow.
Right. Now put him add him onto your expenses and your split, and now you pay. Listen, and so that's
Ooh,
again why people leave the industry. 87% is a very telling number.
that's a high number.
87% of realtors who come in the industry leave within 5 years, statistically speaking. And that's not a new percentage. That has been historical. That's a historical percentage.
Wow. Okay, with that, we gotta take a break. We got to. Not that it's time. We got to. That's a lot. And I think it might because I had even thought about I think this year going for my real estate license. I said maybe I should, do that, because there's some things that I have planned out in the future. And I say, but I'm really rethinking it because we can look at something being easy because like someone like you make it easy because you've been around for a long time, you're successful in it. So people look at you and be like, well, hey, Beverly did it, I can too, but there's a
Mm.
backstory behind the sold
It's the
sign.
backstory.
It's a lot that you have to
Yeah.
do to get to that soul. And like my house that I brought, my let me tell you about my realtor. So she worked with me about almost 3 years. And so yeah, I know at least two. And so I went from going to sell my house. I changed my mind, put it on a land contract, which didn't work out. So really, she didn't get any sales from me getting rid of the house that I own. And then I moved into a house. Yeah, because I was in that house too. So it was 3 years she worked with me. So she found me somebody that would finance me. Then I would, get discouraged. But this lady never gave up on me. So let me tell you how easy it was for her, how God worked this out. 2 doors down from me, they were selling their house. I saw it on the app. I went down there that day. They showed me the house. I only thing she did was walk through the house. She didn't even show up at the closing because she had an appointment on that day. So really, I did all the work when it finally came time, for me to buy the house. But me and her, we laughed about it because I was like, "You have done so much work, stood beside me, that God was like, I'm gonna give this lady a break." So God gave her
Yeah.
a break in the end. But it was 3 years of her not giving up on me. And I am so grateful for her doing that. So, all right, we're gonna take a break. And so while we take a break, you have 1 minute to say whatever you want to say, Miss Beverly. And if y'all are on social media, I hope y'all put some questions out there for her in the comments. So I'm gonna check social media. So you go ahead, Miss Beverly. You got 60 seconds.
Listen, if you are renting, I know that you've heard a lot about the market and there's been a lot of conversation about, well, this is not the time to purchase. But let me just say to you that, the prices for rental properties are increasing. Every month I hear stories, or um every so often I'll hear someone say, "Oh, my landlord just went up $50. My landlord just went up $100. My landlord wants me to move." Listen, when you are in the rental space, you have no control. Now, there is a time to rent and there's a time to purchase. For those of you who believe that Christ is the King of glory and who is your Lord and Savior, I know that you hear from heaven. And if you're hearing from heaven and the Lord has told you to purchase, it's time for you to put those plans in place and begin to reach out to a realtor. Doesn't have to be me, so that she or he can connect you to a a lender that is credible, a lender that is knowledgeable, a lender that is experienced, that can help you get ready if you're not ready to seize the moment when we find your dream home. So I really employ you to consider that. I don't want to go over the time frame that you've allotted me to share. I want to be mindful of that. So
Okay, you was on a roll.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
was gonna
because
stop you.
I really am passionate about people. When it's time, it's a time to rent. But when it's time to purchase, let's shift our mindset and move into the gear of purchasing. Because when you're renting, you're still, unless you're in an apartment building, if you're in a house, you're paying your own lights, you're paying your own gas bill, you're paying your own, or energy, whatever you call it, in whichever city you're in, you're paying your lease fee, if they're depending on the amount of the repairs, because some landlords, in the lease agreement, anything over $100 repair, they want you to contribute to it. So there, I've seen so many things. They want you to have, some of them want you to have homeowners insurance. They want you to purchase that. They have theirs to protect their they're building, but they're not going to protect your or repay if the building, house, whichever, if something happens. They don't want to be the responsible party for reimbursing you or paying for your loss. So they require that you have insurance. So it's a lot that you pay to live in someone else's house, to live in the Lord of the land's house, for them to tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And not only that, you can have lived there 10 years, paid your rent on time for 10 years, took care of the property for 10 years, and then get a 30-day notice that you have to move. I've seen it over and over and over. And I've had, I can't tell you, people come to me crying, literally. I got to move in 30 days and I've been faithful in paying my rent and I've never been on late and I've never, I took care of their property and, so on and so on. But okay, but in the height of the market, now that we did the calculation in the workshop, now that they've made $200,000 off of your rental payments over those 10-year period, now that they have that money, in the height of the market, they want to put their house on the market and sell it so that they maximize that money. And that's why a lot of landlords are saying, hey, I want to sell my house now.
Oh, wow.
And so that puts
Ooh,
the person in crisis mode.
yeah.
Because where can you find a house in 30 days, especially if you weren't planning, you didn't have your escrow, you weren't building up the money to put down for the down payment and for the security deposit and all of this, the moving expense, all of that. You hadn't planned on any of that. Not to mention, you still have to find a house. And
Oh,
not to
wow.
mention, if your children are in school in a particular area. So, there's a lot that goes into it when, if the those that are leasing or renting would have a conversation with a real estate professional to get some insight as to, okay, listen, I know I need to move. Help. What
Wow.
do I do?
Wow. I remember my renting days. I kind of like renting because I was, in an apartment. Only house I ever rented, it did belong to my cousin. But it is a difference between renting and owning your own home, because I look at the rent that's out here. I say, if I lost my home, there's no other place I could go and stay for as less amount I pay now. Because if you was a homeowner during the pandemic, there was a wonderful opportunity for you, because I refinanced from 30 years to 15 years, and my mortgage was less. You can't do that with rent. You can't, say, okay, well, let's renegotiate my rent. I know I'm paying 1,500, but now with the pandemic, can I pay like 800 from now on or whatever? So you're right, owning a house has a lot of advantage. So let me tell you, some of the questions that we had. Wait a minute. I just had questions pulled up here, comments, and I really do despise Facebook at times, because what Facebook will do, they will hide the comments. Oh, here we go. So we have Blair Cherie out there. She said, hello, Renee and Ty. They all say hello. How you doing? So we have a question that said, do your company work on land bank home purchases with home repair funding?
Land bank purchases, no, we don't. Now, if the land bank home has already had the repairs, then yes. Because what happens is land bank, they have several different programs. Land bank have a program where you can, let's say, purchase a house for $10,000 and then you can rehab it. Well, in that case, you just purchase that directly from land bank. Typically, land bank will sell you those homes directly. However, land bank also have a program where they purchase the home themselves, renovated the homes, and put the home on the market. And now it's a nice home, just like any other investor, and it's ready to sell. On those cases, we do work with those homes that were originally land bank, but they've been totally renovated. Then yes.
Okay, so you're saying if we buy the home from the land bank and we um get it together and everything, then you can work with us to.
No, if you buy the home
Okay.
from Land Bank, you
Okay.
would not need my service because you just purchased it from Land Bank directly. And
Okay.
so you would get the rehab money and you rehab it or have a company rehab it. But
Mhm.
also Land Bank have another service where they themselves take their homes that they own and renovate them totally and then put them on the market
Okay.
as a
Then you.
traditional sale. Then I could come into play to represent you as the buyer's agent for that sale.
Okay, got you
Mhm.
on that. All right. Because it's a lot of programs out there that people don't know about when it comes to housing. Because I didn't know, I don't, well, I'm not going to say the name, but it was a bank that I didn't know that if you purchase your home, you could also get like a construction, I guess, construction loan
Sure,
where they
sure.
would fix it up. I didn't even know that. Then I didn't know that this bank, if you bought your house in a certain area, they would pay so much of your closing costs. And the only reason I
Mhm.
found out is because I was in there and I looked up on the wall and they had up there talking about their
Down
mortgage.
payment assistance program, which is
Yeah.
some of the information that I provided at the workshop, because there are so many different down payment assistance programs, even in Detroit now, 20, which I mentioned in the workshop. Detroit have a $25,000 down payment assistant program. $25,000. Come on now.
Yeah. Is that
That's
just for first time
exceptional.
homeowners?
No, ma'am. No, that's not. They have their stipulations, so you have to see what the criteria is, and you don't have to repay the money. It's not even a grant, but
Wow.
the home must be purchased in Detroit, though.
Yeah, because like I said, when I was it was nobody but God led me to this bank. And so if y'all want to know what the bank is, just put in the comment. I want to know, and I'll inbox you and tell you what the bank was. They paid most of my closing costs, and
Mhm.
I also had an opportunity because my garage needed to be fixed that I could have took out a loan with my mortgage to fix my garage or anything else I want to do with my house. It takes a little bit longer and you have to have a construction company come out and give them an estimate. But because the people that were in my house really needed to move, I skipped that part, which was kind of good for me because that would have just been extra on my mortgage. But I'm telling you, you have to talk to Miss Beverly. She has all the resources you need. Don't give up on owning a home. Don't give up. You might be looking to rent, and God is saying it's time for you to own a home, and that might be why you were running into these roadblocks. So now we're on the second half, and we already got Miss Beverly fired up for this second half. Now, this is where we're going to really get into the meat. Now, you're passionate about wealth accumulation through real estate. What are some practical steps individuals or families can take to begin building wealth in real estate?
Well, again, the first thing I would look at, because again, if you had to move tomorrow, if you rented a property and you had to move tomorrow, would you be able to sell that property? Would you be able to get any equity? Would you be able to walk away from the table and have 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, $100,000 in your pocket based on the principles that you have paid over those years that you rented? No. But guess who would? The landlord. so so one of the ways that we began to look at building wealth is home ownership. Real estate, whether you are an investor, whether you're a homeowner, is one of the primary ways that we began to create wealth. Now, I do want to say this because I just a few months ago closed a deal with a young lady who had been renting for years, and she was paying it was a little bit under $2,000. But when she closed on her house, her mortgage, and she was in Detroit when she was renting, her mortgage payment was around $1,200 because of the purchase of that. So, mind you, that's like a $500 or $600 savings per month. Now, could you do something extra with $500 or $600? And I'm talking about that was her principal, her interest, their principal interest, and taxes and insurance. So around 1,200, that $1,200 mark paid for everything. Now, if you are accustomed to paying 1,800, and now you're paying 1,200. That's $600 less that you're paying. And not only do you save that money or reinvest that money, or maybe split it. Part of it you reinvest, and part of it you take your family on a vacation, or part of it maybe you pay off your vehicle so that you can ride free. There are so many different strategies that can be employed so that you don't have any debt. Think about when you pay off that car and now you're not paying that additional interest rate. That's a wealth saver. Think about paying off your credit cards. Now, you're taking the extra $300 to pay off the credit card, another $300 to invest. Now you're getting dividends on that investment. That creates wealth. So there's so many different ways when we take advantage of what's been made available to us that we can begin to build wealth and begin to be like other communities and show not only that we are a viable people, but that we show our children how to create wealth. And so it becomes a generational pattern.
I like that because I never thought about that. If you paying like $1,500 rent, but then your house note is 800. That's a lot of extra money that you got coming in. And then this is something that you're building equity every time you pay. So it's like it's buying a house is to me the biggest purchase you ever made. A lot of people put a lot of money into it. I just can't see driving a $40,000 house, I mean car, that by the time in about 10 years or 15 years, that car is only worth like maybe 5 grand. Like I think about my last car, I paid, I think it was like 12 grand for it. But by the time I sold it for like $500. And I think of all that money I paid for that car, and that car didn't appreciate it was going down. Only thing I got back off that car when I sold it was like I got 3 years of driving after I paid it off. But I'm saying for all the money I put in it, I really only got back like 400, $500. And but a house doesn't work like that because you got your credit line. If you have equity, your home equity line of credit that you can use to maybe start a business, pay off your credit card. So you're right. It's so much wealth in owning a house. And then it's an asset. Some of us don't have assets because we're renting. We're leasing our car, we're renting. So we literally have no assets to pass on. We have debt, but not assets. We have liabilities. So you are so right, Miss Beverly. We have to change our mindset. And so it comes to my next question. Why do you think our culture don't see the wealth of like abandoned houses, or when mama died and mama leave us her house, or wealth building in real estate like other cultures do? Remember the story you shared about the man that every time his grandchildren was born, he brought him a house? Okay, could you share that
Absolutely.
story too?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. But before I do that, I also
Yeah.
want to say that as a homeowner, when you do your taxes, you also can take a credit for the taxes that you pay, the interest that you pay um, on your property taxes, and I mean, and not your property, on the interest that you pay on your mortgage payment. So those are become deductible tax deductions on your tax uh, your form, your tax filing process. Okay, getting to this story, I was on. It was a virtual training, and it was an investors training, and so I was online, and this gentleman talked about. He was in Colorado or somewhere, and he said, when my wife and I, every time we have a grandchild, we buy another investment property and we put a renter in that investment property for the 18 years to pay for that grandchild's college education. And so I use the example of, if, very arbitrary number, $1,000. So if you have 1,000, if you're renting a property for $1,000 over an 18 period year, a period of 18 years, it would end up being like $216,000 that person or whoever, or multiple persons, because typically rental timeline, which person rents, is 7 to 10 years. So it may have been two or three different people. rented the property. Nevertheless, $216,000 was acquired through rental income for those 18 years. Now we know that there are some expenses associated with that. But even if it's 180,000, don't you think that you can send your child to college? I could give my grandchild, $180,000 and say, here's your college tuition money. Don't worry about taking out a loan. So that's what they did each year. Each time they had a grandchild, they let us or whoever the renter was pay for that child's college education through that rental property income. Now, how
Oh,
brilliant is that?
that's very brilliant. How, I just wonder, I think we as a culture, we're consumers. We want to look
We
rich.
have we have been consumers. We have been ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I mean not stupid, ignorant
Mhm.
as in did not know. However, we've come to a place now where we that can no longer be our excuse because we have been sounding the alarm. We have been bringing it to the forefront. There are so many different programs, whether you want to live in Detroit, whether you want to live in West Bloomfield Hill, whether you want to live in Taylor, whether you want to live in um, Troy, wherever you want to live, Lathrop Village, wherever you want to live, there are home buying programs, down payment assistant programs that will help you pay for, and some are not even income driven
Mm.
anymore. So the thing is about finding out, getting with the right realtor and lender team and finding out what are your options. The other thing I hear a lot of, well, what if the furnace goes out? Well, that's why they have home warranties. Ask for a home warranty when you purchase a home or purchase a home warranty. A home warranty is usually less than $600 or $700, and it'll cover your stove, refrigerator, washer, dryer, furnace, AC, all of those things. And so what I'm saying is we have to move beyond making excuses of why we won't, why we can't. And the other thing I can tell you this is that if we don't get poverty minded people out of our ear, we will never do anything. You have people who are renters, they're lifelong renters. They don't want anything. I'm not saying they don't want anything, but I'll say it like this: they're very comfortable renting and leasing. They want to rent cars, or rent a house and lease cars, and they're very comfortable. That is their lifestyle. And if that's your lifestyle and that's what you want to do you. But if I'm branching out, I want to own outright, someday own my house, and certainly want to own my vehicle. Do not try to lock me in to your frame of mind and reference of always having to pay and have a cash outlay every month to everyone else. No, I want to be able to pay myself. I like nice vehicles, but guess what? I like driving free. so so
Girl, set free. And you know what,
I
Miss
I
Beverly?
do love a luxury vehicle. Let's be clear, but I do not love a car payment. Okay, so
Mm-mm, I'm
so
with you,
so
girl.
when I can afford to just take 100,000 or 80,000 or whatever my vehicle of choice and just buy it cash, maybe I'll do that. And speaking of that, yes, I see my share of clients who they can't buy a house because their car note is $800 or $900, and I'm being very transparent. And so their income to debt is too high between all of their credit cards being maxed out and their maybe child support or uh, their car note, car insurance, all of these different things. And so they don't make enough
Oh,
because
wow.
they're up to here in debt. And their car note, usually I'm telling you, I've seen car notes is $1,200, and people are renting, everyday people renting,
Lease, they leasing in their car notice that much? Nah,
depending on the vehicle,
can't be
depending
me.
on the vehicle, with the car note
Mm-mm.
and the insurance.
Mm,
$1,200.
we gotta move
Yeah,
on.
hey,
Oh.
whatever works for you. But again, when we talk
Mhm,
about wealth and creating wealth, these are things that steal our wealth. Not to
mm,
mention, and there's a whole lot more, not to mention not having a traditional bank account and you have to go to the money cashing place and they take your money and
mm,
take advantage of the cost to cash your check. So many different things that really steal and really eat at our finances. Now I want to go back to your question about why do I think that so many of us do not want to move into grandma's house or granddad's house or whoever. And I think part of that is because we are consumers and we think that we've moved on beyond that. Oh, I'm above that now. I don't want to live in that neighborhood. I don't want to live in that house. That house needs so much work. And I'm not going to put my money in it. But guess who put their money in it? Either your mother, your father, or both, or your grandfather, your grandmother, or both. They invested in that house, and it is wealth. And so, as I talked about in the workshop, we look at communities as ghettos, but the
mhm.
investors come in and they look at them as gold mines. So they come right in, purchase the house you wouldn't dare live in, fix it up, and then sell it back to you for tens of thousands of dollars more. So and 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 call it, and we're upset when we call it regentrification. We say, oh, a gentrification. Oh, they're coming in here and they're buying up our houses. Are you talking about the house that you rode past for 15 years that you ignored or your
Oh,
neighbor ignored? No one would come together. No one would create a syndicate. A syndicate's group of people, group of investors that make a determination that they're going to focus on purchasing, or investing in a particular property or a particular multi-unit, particular, area, so forth. So, but if you don't have the vision or the passion, but then when you see someone else that do, and they're coming in and taking advantage, we can't be like little children that we weren't even thinking about that toy until we saw the other child playing
yes.
with it.
Yes. So right quick, we only have a few minutes. Just tell us right quick about, you talked about airspace
Air
and,
property, oh yes.
yeah, and did you say mineral rights also?
Well, oh yes. Oh, so
Okay.
yes, when you own a house. Okay, yes. So especially here in Michigan and different states are different. But then when you own a house, you own the land under the house, and you own the airspace over the house. So if someone was to come on your house, say, let's say, and they struck oil on your land in your backyard, that's your oil. That's why they have to pay you, because it was your land that they struck oil on. You own that land. You own the mineral rights that are under the house, and you own the airspace that's over the house. So so in Michigan, it's not just and in lots of states in Michigan, not, I mean, in lots of states in the United States, excuse me, that is the case. Not all countries, though, are not like that, not all states, because some places where you might own the house, you may not own the land because the land may be leased. I talked about where, like, if you're in a fabricated or prefabricated home community or a trailer park or something like that. Those lots are leased, so you can park your trailer there, or you can have your prefabricated home pulled there or built there. But typically, the land itself you never own because it's owned by a separate entity, a company, an investor, or someone. So you never own the land. So if you lived in a prefabricated house and right outside the backyard that you call the backyard there, they struck oil, you wouldn't own that. So it wouldn't be necessarily your oil. Okay. I mean, the proceeds from that income from the oil gush would not be yours because it would be considered perhaps, and it depends on the lease agreement and the documentation, but it could be, you might be entitled to some of the reserves, but depending on the lease agreement, it could be totally the owner's um, proceeds as it relates to the oil.
Well, thank you, Miss Beverly. So we got, I'm gonna give you a 2 minute closeout. I ain't gonna say much. I'm gonna give you a 2 minute closeout to say whatever you want to say, summarize. Please make sure you put your contact information. That's what I've been forgetting to tell you. Make sure you give
Okay.
them your contact information. All right, go right ahead.
So let me do that now. So I'm again Beverly Jordan, Global Scope Real Estate Solutions Principal, Broker, and Managing Owner of Real Estate. Now my information is B is in Beverly, J is in Jordan, dreamseller@gmail.com. BJ Dream Seller, plural, not plural, singular, excuse me, @gmail.com. BJ Dream Seller. And then my number is 248-667-1456. 248-667-1456. If you have been considering selling a home, or if you have been considering purchasing a home, I would love to have a consultation with you about those options and just look at where the market is and perhaps what your market value of your home might be. Because it really depends on where it is. It depends on the updates, depends on the square footage. It depends on if it's a ranch versus a bungalow or colonial. It depends on where it's located. It depends on the school district. So there's so many different factors that come into play, but I would love to have a conversation with you around your real estate desires and needs. Now, listen, I have a church that is for sale. I have two churches that are on the market, actually, three churches. One is large enough to be a warehouse. One is over almost, I don't know how many thousand square feet, and is deemed historic. And then I have another one that's smaller, that's a multi-purpose, and it's about 3,000 square feet, perfect for an office or a upstarting church ministry business. And so if you are looking for residential or commercial, and I also have vacant lots available. So if you're looking for residential, commercial, or investment properties, listen, we have it all. We're not limited in our scope of service. We're not limited in where we offer the service. Again, as I said, we are collaborators. We collaborate with those in state, out of state, and even across the state, across the globe. And not every country, but most countries. So I don't want to say that we have connection and collaborations in every country, but we certainly will do our very best to reach out and see if we can accommodate you.
All right, give me your website again and how they can contact you.
The website is www global scope solutions globalscopesolutions.com. And the email address is bjdreamseller@gmail.com, bjdreamseller@gmail.com. And my telephone number is 248-667-1456. And guess what? You have a dream and it has an address. So call me your dream seller.
I love it. All right, Facebook, we gotta go. We're out of time, but I want to thank Miss Beverly for being an amazing guest and giving us so much information. So probably your wheels are turning, like, oh wow, now I hope you look at real estate a little bit different and that vacant house or even your mama's house. A lot of times we turn up our nose because we're like, I used to live, I don't like the neighbor. That's money. That is money.
Money. It's
Money,
a
money, money.
dishonor. Yes.
Yes. So, all right, everybody, we're signing off Facebook. Tune in next week at 8:30 p.m. Your favorite Ruby girl, Dr. K, will be back. And please share this video. Have a great and fantastic night. So, we're signing off Facebook. Good night, Facebook.